All of life is filled with change. Things are not the same as they used to be. Change is one of the most constant things that happens to a human being in the course of their lifetime. And things that were one way are now different.
I knew I didn't have the mental or physical wherewithal to do it, but any time that I said, that I just prayed, God, please carry me through this one more time, that became the positive thing that I could find, and that became the proof and the truth through everything. It's like, okay, you got it, one more day. Let's do another day together.
So change is difficult because sometimes people don't see themselves out of change, out of the norm. They don't see themselves being able to make things different.
Some change you don't have any control over, like getting old. But some change you want to make yourself.
Serving and being like Christ will transform us, and it transforms others.
They're afraid of the unknown. They're afraid of what it will cost them, and they're afraid it's not going to work out. It's not going to be worth it.
For the next 6 weeks, we're going to go on this journey together of learning about the stuff that dies, the stuff that comes to life, and the stuff that will never be the same again. And so we go. We go as ones who are surviving change. What's one thing that you've changed today? Think about it. Since you woke up this morning, what is one thing that has changed? One thing that's different maybe today as compared to yesterday. If you can't think of anything, here's a thought. Every minute, between 30 and 40,000 of your skin cells die. You won't finish watching this video with the same skin that you started out with. Every day as human beings, we're experiencing change. So what's changed for you today? Maybe it was something you chose to change. You chose to change your routine, the way you did your hair, maybe toast instead of cereal, maybe more coffee, less coffee, I don't know. Maybe something changed on you. You got news you didn't expect. Somebody's leaving you. A friend becoming an enemy. It's a new health challenge. You're getting older and you're not able to do something that you could do before. Change is something that happens to us all, and it happens all the time. And yet nothing takes our breath and surprises us more than change. And even good change comes with challenges, right? A new job is great, but it brings the unknown. It brings new routines and relationships that we have to adjust to. Change a lot of times is the place in our story that we point to. And we look back and we say, that's where it all started, or that's where it all fell apart. In this series, what we want to talk about is surviving change, because I know it's really difficult. And the reality is that if change is such a big part of our life, and if even good change can be difficult, then how do we deal with change in a healthy way? And more than that, how does God help us through change? It seems to me that there's a path, there's a map for change built into the life of Jesus. So throughout this series, we're going to use 3 steps to help us figure out how to deal with whatever change, whether we chose it or not, that might come our way. First thing we need to know is that when change happens, stuff dies. The Bible talks about crucifixion. It's this moment when Jesus died, he was killed. But when we look at change, crucifixion might be a good way to think about it. Whether it's the good change of moving to a new state, taking a new job, or the difficult change of losing our marriage, there are just things in each of those changes that die, right? Our dreams, our expectations, our relationships. What if step 1 in dealing with change is just to call out the stuff that's dying? Change is causing this stuff to die, and I need to call it what it is and be sad about it and grieve about it. My marriage isn't coming back. I need to grieve that. I won't be able to have the same friendships because I moved. I need to grieve that. Second, when change happens, stuff also comes back to life. The Bible calls this resurrection. In Jesus' story, death always leads to life. The Bible tells that story over and over. You were dead at one point, not literally dead, but you were in a really dark place. But the story of Jesus says there's life there, no matter what. With Jesus, stuff dying always leads to stuff coming back to life. So in step 2, we ask this question: what's coming back to life? Even though things have changed, even though stuff has died, where are we seeing new life coming up? What new life is coming out of this even though this relationship has died? What new life is coming up even in the midst of a really difficult health crisis? And then third, even though stuff comes back to life, stuff is never the same. And this might be the hardest step. After a season of change, there's this hunger in us for things to go back to the way they were. We want things to be familiar again, to have the same people and the same conversations in our life that we used to. But this is a huge spot of trust, because even as we go through change that's painful, God wants to use that change for good. So yes, the Bible talks about things like, for you were once darkness, you were once full of darkness, but now you have light from the Lord, so live as people of light. It says that in Ephesians. And yeah, darkness has turned to light. Stuff died and new life is coming. That means you can't go back to the darkness though. And sometimes, even as weird as this sounds, we want to go back to the darkness. Haven't you heard the phrase, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know? Sometimes we want to go back to our unhealthy way of dealing with things. We get clean from drinking, but now we've got to deal with the world in a different way. It might just be easier to go back to dealing with it the way we used to. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe we want to go back in time before that tragedy that happened in our life. We just can't. God's going to help us go through change, but we're going to have to go forward differently. Can't go back, no matter what. So in this series, that's what we're going to talk about. How do we go through any kind of change and come through it healthy and hopeful no matter what? So here are some of the questions we'll wrestle with. When it comes to our relationships, how does change work? Do things die even in healthy friendships, healthy marriages? And what about painful endings like divorce? How do new things come to life in those relationships? When do we live? How do we live when things are changing? What about as we age? If we're 25 trying to act like we're 15, something needs to die. So how do we let things of our youth die and begin to live in the new things that come with getting older? As awkward as that might be. What about when our culture changes? Everyone has a time in their life they call the good old days. How do we deal with changes in our world that don't feel good old to us? So in this series, you're going to hear stories, you're going to hear commentary and conversation that helps you make sense of each session. There's going to be some worship to help get our minds focused on hearing how God wants to bring us through change. You also have a study guide that'll help you think through the teaching and have some great discussions. And if you're a group leader, there's some help in there for you. Help you lead your group, structure it, organize it. We want to help you as best that we can. And so, we're all going to go through this together. So let's figure out, how do we change and survive?
I see the King of Glory coming on the clouds with fire. Whole earth shakes, whole earth shakes, yeah. I see His love and mercy washing over all our sin. The people sing, the people sing, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. I see a generation rising up to take their place. Selfless faith, selfless faith. I see a new revival stirring as we pray and seek. On our knees, on our knees. Hosanna, Hosanna. Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna.